Welcome to another episode of Give It a Nudge. Today we have someone who's recently become, I feel, like a little bit of a friend of mine, Maria Halasz, who is running and not founding, but running, I guess, but it's still quite early stages, a new business called Stride Equity that is not just helping founders raise money and sort of teaching them about how to grow their businesses, but creating a mentorship program and actually preparing them before they go out and look for those investors. And I think it's an area that's much needed. So a very welcome business to the ecosystem, in my view. Welcome, Maria.
Thank you so much, Steve.
So here we are. How long have we known each other? It's not like, what is it? It feels like years, but it's about 8 weeks or something.
Three months.
We've done so many things together. It's been so exciting. But why don't we start by just introduce what Stride Equity is to the audience, and then we'll sort of go back and talk a little bit more about you.
Well, Stride Equity is a venture group, and we invest through a digital investment platform.
Yep.
And our investors are wholesale and retail investors. We also co-invest with the platform. So we really support early stage companies, emerging companies that perhaps not targets for venture capitals to invest in. Perhaps they are.
Yep.
But we really are here to address that gap on the market for really dynamic, innovative, emerging companies that otherwise wouldn't get funded, really.
Absolutely. Fantastic. So let's talk a little bit about you and how you ended up here, because you did not start in this world. You started almost at the other end of the scale in the high-powered world of banking and investment banking and IPOing and sort of that sort of stuff. So give us a little bit of a snapshot of where Maria's come from.
Actually, I've come through a full circle back into venture capital because my first job was in a startup.
I did not know that.
Yes, so my very first job was in a biotech company,
Okay.
and I was an analyst. And I ran 3 programs for them, and I reported directly to the board. Plus, I was responsible for developing all the material for capital raising.
Aha, see, this is where full circle.
Exactly.
So-
And then I went into investment banking, and I ran a life sciences team.
Yep.
So we had a bunch of directors and analysts, and we raised a lot of money for biotechnology companies that were listed on the stock exchange.
Yep.
And we IPO'd some companies as well. And then I ran a listed biotechnology company for 14 years.
Yeah, so I'm intrigued, right? So I didn't know you'd started in startups, so that's new information for me, which is exciting. What was it like going from a startup, which was, the startup scene was nothing like it is now, and it was probably more focused around things like biotech than perhaps software like it is today. But what was it like going from that kind of organization where there's a lot of fluidity, there's not a lot of red tape, you're just there to get things done in any way, to moving into that investment banking world where there's more process than you can ever dream of, a lot of regulation, supposedly. Why did you make that move, and how was that?
So there was a little bit of transition. So after the biotech company job, I actually spent 4 years asset management, and
Yep.
that was really managed investment schemes. So I really got a good training about regulations,
Yeah, okay.
the regulatory environment. We also registered a pool development fund.
Okay.
We raised money into that. So there was a real transition into much more regulated, investor-based, taking someone else's money, being in a trust position,
Yeah.
if you like, and managing that to fruition. So there was that transition. And I got into investment banking purely because of my biotechnology technical
Yeah.
background. They really were looking for someone who had the investment, the regulatory experience, but also a technical biotech person. And of course, my original degree is in science,
Yes.
biological sciences.
And then you ran one for 14 years, right? Which is
Yes.
no mean feat. Like that's not an easy thing to do. Do you reckon that was the role you learnt the most in?
Absolutely. I think running a listed company, and although we were a small company, it doesn't matter because the regulation, the governance and the requirements to your shareholders and different stakeholders is exactly the same. So it's a very, very complex job. It really teaches you how to build a good team around yourself and then rely on that team for components of the business because it is very complex. You can't do everything yourself.
No.
And of course, there's so much that you have to report to. Basically, you work for everyone.
And your biotech as well, adding even more regulation on top of what the regulation is there normally for everyone else, right?
Absolutely. That's a whole different
Yeah,
ball game.
let's not get into that. We haven't got time to get into that. So okay, let's go to where we are now, right? Straight equity. So I guess, this world that you're in now, again, is probably almost the opposite of what that was to some degree in terms of running a listed business. You've got so much more freedom. But, you've been raising money pretty much your whole career.
Yes.
Where did the Stride idea come from? Where did it sort of spawn from?
Again, talking about full circles, I worked for Investec for a period of time,
Yep.
and I had two wonderful bosses, Ellen Jonowitz and John Brett. And when I left my listed company CEO role, I was taking some time off, and they've approached me to see whether I wanted to join them. And they already registered an equity crowdfunding platform by that stage, and they really wanted to understand how to launch it commercially, how to actually run it, basically.
Yep.
And so I looked at generally the venture capital market or the early stage funding market in Australia. And it was quite clear to me that there's a huge gap between risk appetite and investors who are out there to invest, and the number of investors currently investing in these opportunities. So, and on the ASX, you see 10 million Australians invest directly in high-risk ASX-listed companies, whereas you get somewhere between 100 and 200,000 Australians so far invested in these private opportunities through these platforms. So there was a huge opportunity, or there is a huge opportunity, but the question is how to tap into it. And it was very clear to me that by putting indiscriminate number of deals on the platform, digital platform, and just say to people, come and invest, is not going to do it.
No.
So plus we had that enormous capabilities in-house. We had John, Allen, and myself, and between us, we've got about 100 years of investment management experience.
That's a lot.
So, and most of it not me. I'd like to say.
You just bring 5 or 6, right? Yeah.
Exactly. So, we wanted to take advantage of that, and of course, this is our key differentiating factor. I mean, we will only put opportunities on the platform for others to invest in that we also either invest in or we feel it's investment quality, and we're happy to have a cornerstone investor in there.
Yeah, and I think that's probably, when we first met and we talked about this, crowdfunding has been around a while, and I think that it has worked for a very small percentage of startups out there in terms of it's usually a B2C where those people are going to be customers and they become your raving fans and so forth, right, that everyone talks about. But outside of that, it's had pretty poor results. And I think that what you guys are doing is you are looking, well, I'll tell you how I describe you when people ask me about Stride. I kind of describe you as somewhere between a crowdfunding platform, a VC, a private equity, and an incubator, all wrapped up to one, and you're taking all the best parts and putting it into one place. Is that accurate? Because that's how I see it.
I need to hire you to tell that story because that's pretty much what we do. And, you put PE, private equity, into that. And that is so true because a lot of the opportunities that we look at are revenue generating already. They've got a strategic investor, but they just need to complete a pilot to get that next stage, or they just need to complete a particular program to get to that next stage. And they already secured the subsequent funding or the subsequent support. So, very much so, the way you describe us is exactly what we do.
Yeah, I like to make everything simple. So simple terminology. So you are doing a cohort of teaching people to become investment ready, which you literally just launched. Was it last week? Was it a
couple of weeks ago?
A couple of weeks ago, right? And that's powering on. And I came to that launch party, and I have to say, I think, and I've been to lots of competitions, pitch shows, launch nights, gosh, way too many probably. I was so impressed with the quality of the actual companies that came up and presented. I mean, I genuinely was like, there wasn't one in there that you weren't like, oh, wow. Normally it's the other way around. There's normally a whole bunch where you go, yeah, and then there's one real standout. How have you managed to achieve that? Because I was literally blown. I mean, I didn't get to talk to you after because I had to run off, but I was literally blown away by that.
Look, we didn't actually select the companies, but I think once you tell the market of what you are, what you're looking for, and what you're trying to do, I think you naturally attract like-minded people. Mm-hmm. So we ourselves were absolutely astonished by the quality of the founders.
That's insane.
Like, they are experienced, leaders in their industry. I mean, we've got senior banking people there. We've got senior technologists. It's just the depth of experience and the depth of knowledge there is amazing. I mean, we were also very, very pleasantly surprised, and we look forward to learn from them as much as they're learning from us. To be quite honest.
Absolutely. I mean, I think also the problems they were solving. Often you get, particularly at pitch competitions, you get a lot of people who've had a personal problem or a family problem that they are trying to address, which is great, and that's how companies start. But all of these seem to be global problems. Like, these were big thinking people who've gone, this isn't a me problem, this is a world problem, and I've got an idea on how we're going to solve it. And I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for me, was that the scalability of all of those companies was quite remarkable.
As I said, I agree with you, and the fact that we've been able to attract this kind of talent is just amazing.
So give me a quick run through on the program. So is it 10 weeks? Is that right?
It's 8 weeks.
8 weeks. So just give me a quick rundown on the obviously not too much depth, but just a sort of a précis of each week.
So look, the whole purpose of the program is to say, you've got a business, you know what you're doing, you know how to get to the market, you've got the experience. Now you're ready to raise money.
Yep.
How are you going to do that? And, capital raising, a lot of the founders don't realize that this is a specific skill. And, it also takes enormous amount of time, commitment, and some very basic tools. And we find that even really good companies that come to us don't have a proper pitch deck. It's all over the place. Or, when you actually want to do due diligence, they don't have a data room. So we take them through the very basics of what you need to have as a business before you go out. Obviously, we take it for granted that they've got a business that has a good chance of raising money. Then we basically allow them to develop a pitch deck, and we provide mentors to assist them with that. They're going to also get a little bit of training around pitching their business in a 2-minute kind of elevator pitch, but also in a bigger, when you go to a meeting and you're given 5 to 10 minutes to introduce yourself, what are you going to say?
Yeah.
And because those are two obviously different things. Then we'll take them through of the requirements in terms of what does your company have to have? Like the proper incorporation documents, the constitution, shareholders agreement. Then the meaty bits. When someone is offering you a term sheet, what are the terms that are important to negotiate, and what are the terms that are so standard in our industry these days that don't worry about them? We take them through the economic and the control terms and all the other things like indemnities. And then we're going to basically allow them to really have the structure financially, so that when they take on an investment, investors can be comfortable that, in a year's time when they come back, the report will be clear.
Yep.
They understand where their company is going financially. And there's a milestone that they can monitor and clearly see.
And I think going through that program, and I think there's one on next week, which I'm quite keen to sit on. And I'm taking one of them, aren't I, in a few weeks' time as well. I haven't prepared for that yet, but I will be, don't worry. But I think it's the confidence. Like, when I've seen founders go out and start to fundraise, and they really struggle at the beginning because they actually just don't have the confidence. And if you've never done it before, asking for money in any form is difficult. I think a lot of founders struggle asking for their invoices to be paid when they've actually done a service, but to actually go out and ask for money when you're looking for backing, I think that's another whole thing. So I also think that confidence piece that I think being in a group like that and going through a program like this will give them is amazing. And there's no other crowdfunding platform that would give you anything like that sort of preparation. So anyway, I'm super excited to see how it pans out and goes.
Well, we're super excited to have you at the session.
Well, we'll see how I go first. It's the first time, so And so, what's the long-term play? Obviously, yes, you've got this educational arm. You're looking for these companies, and we're starting that. But what's the long-term play for Stride?
Look, we want to build a portfolio of companies within our stable that are really good companies that have a good chance of success.
Yeah.
We want to help them to raise the appropriate funding, but obviously we've got a lot of other skills that we can facilitate their progress. We want to help them with our contacts, connections. Yeah. But from a Stride perspective, ultimately we want a portfolio of wonderful companies on our balance sheet.
Yep.
And we also want to have a thriving business. And we want to be known as the people to go to if you want to invest in a portfolio of early stage companies that could potentially give you great returns.
And so if I'm an investor and I'm interested in sort of working with Stride, how does that work? How do you go about that? What's the sort of stages that I would take?
Look, it's very, very simple. I mean, we've got a digital platform and, you can be as involved with us as you want.
Yep.
You can be as non-involved as you want.
No talking.
No talking. Like you can just go on our platform, register yourself as a user, and we've got a regular newsletter. And in that newsletter, we provide information about the upcoming deals,
Yep.
some of our founders, and also we provide a bit of value add in terms of just intelligence around the industry. So you can leave it at that. If you're really interested in one of the offers that are on our platform, you can look at them. We organize webinars where you can attend and you can interact with people. So we provide a lot of information to investors to make their decision. But if you feel like, I see this company, I know the founder somehow, somewhere else. I've seen them.
Which is often the way. Like I knew some of the ones that
Exactly.
came the other night. I didn't know they were coming. So it happens.
Exactly, it happens. We've got a very small world here. And so if you're confident that there's a good chance of them succeeding and you don't mind investing $5,000, $10,000 or $250 sometimes, then you can just go ahead and within 5 minutes you can make an investment from registration. So again, you can be as self-driven or as involved with us as you want to be.
And that was you've kind of touched on my next question, so thank you for that. What is the minimum amount and is there a maximum amount in terms of how you, once you go on that platform, is that set by the founders who put themselves on there, or is that set by Stride?
Well, it's a negotiation, and we've launched middle of last year, as you know, so we're a fairly new platform. We've got 3 transactions so far, and the average investment, individual investment, is in the first one was just under $6,000, but now it's much bigger. So we're probably looking at something like $10,000 to $12,000 individual investment, and that includes a wholesale transaction as well. So a lot of the equity crowdfunding platforms, they go down to $250 per investment. And it really will depend on the company that you put on a platform, what the minimum investment might be. So far, all our investments are more B2B. And because of that, they attract that B2B kind of investor. And because of that, the check sizes are larger. But in terms of the next deals, we might put on another transaction, another company that we really believe in. They may have an amazing consumer product and a great following. We might make it, sub $1,000. Who knows?
Okay, cool. And on that, if I am a founder and I do want to come on the platform, I'm assuming that there's a vetting process, a meeting process. How does that work?
We tend to spend a bit of time vetting companies.
This is good. This is a good thing, particularly if you're one of the investors, because there are platforms that potentially don't do as much vetting as we've spoken about in the past.
So we look at you as a founder, and we make a decision very quickly whether we want to spend time with you. But if we don't mind spending time with you, then we'll listen to everything you've got to say about the business, where you are, where it is, who the investors are. We look at all the components, and we're sensitive to valuation to some extent, perhaps more so than other crowdfunding platforms. Really, ultimately, we have to make sure that our investors are going to make a return. And when you come to us as a founder, you're also an investor in your own company. So you kind of have to change hat, take off my I'm so excited about my company hat, and put on I've just invested all this time and effort and money into this company. I really want it to succeed. How is it going to succeed and when? So those are the things that we like to see. So we do spend a bit of time on companies. We don't do the type of due diligence that venture firms do, but we certainly get very close to it.
Well, that first hat's a lot more fun to wear, though. But you do need to have that second hat in the briefcase to pull it out, or the duffel bag, or whatever it is. Absolutely. Well, look, I am so looking forward to, one, seeing how these companies that we saw the other day go. And I'm assuming that, are you going to continue to do that? You're going to continue to run events like that so if I do come on the platform, and like you said, I can be as involved or as much as little as I want. If I'm someone that comes on and goes, actually, I want to see these guys pitch live, are you going to run those regularly, those kind of events? Is that something you're looking at doing in the future?
Actually, we want, obviously, we've just started this program, and it seems to be going wonderfully so far. knock on
I would
wood.
agree with that.
And we've got fabulous companies, and we would really like to run this at least a couple of times a year
Yep.
for companies, because I think it's a really important service that we could provide to the ecosystem generally. We won't be funding all of these companies. We might fund 1, 2, or 3 companies out of the 13 in our cohort currently. But what's important to us is that we kind of level up the ecosystem in terms of capital raising capabilities that are concern. So that's one thing. The other thing is that, we will continue to broaden the offering, what we provide to companies.
Yeah.
And we already have a corporate advisory service that we tap into a number of venture partners. So companies, when they come to us, they can take advantage of other benefits, not just the capital raising skills, really.
That's awesome. And I think, and when you look at, have you looked at any international companies so far who are looking to raise money here, or is that something maybe for the future? Or I'll be honest, I don't know the regulations around that kind of stuff, but is that something that potentially, if I was an investor and I wanted to invest in a company that was born out of Singapore or something like that, is that something that will happen at some stage, you think?
So on our wholesale digital platform, we can do that.
Yeah.
The equity crowdfunding regulation prevents you from
I thought so,
funding,
yeah, I had a feeling so.
companies.
But wholesales can, yeah.
But wholesale, yes. And we've got a private offer platform as well, which is an important component of this, because if you have a constituent already, if you've got shareholders already, and you just want to top up or do an extra round, we can do that in a private offer on our digital platform. We've just done one of those, and it just makes it so much easier. You don't get bogged down with capital raising. We'll do all the work for you.
That's awesome. Amazing. Well, let's see how we go. I'm so looking forward to this. Like I said, I feel like I've known you for so long, and it's been such a short period of time. But we will come back on the show in a year's time, and we'll see how that first 12 months has been. But look, I think you're raising the standards in crowd and equity funding, which had to happen, and I'm very pleased to see that on both sides. Like for the investors, they're going to get probably a much better quality of business that they can look at, but from a founder perspective, they've got the opportunity to learn how to do this really well. And I think raising the level on both, it can only be a win-win, right?
Thank you for having me, Steve. It's just been great. And your summary and your messaging of our business, as I said, I probably have to hire you.
My pleasure, Maria. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching today's episode. Don't forget to subscribe, and we'll see you next week.